When you look around at top performing teams, what do you think lead to those results? Productivity, innovation, talent, funding? Any other ideas? Well, I'm convinced that the number one thing that will truly drive your team's success is something you might not expect, and we're going to get into it today. Let's do it. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Culture Keepers podcast, where we dive deep into the heart of leadership and how to build thriving teams and workplace cultures. I'm your leadership coach, Kara List, and today I want to start by sharing a story about a heated argument I had with a 5-year-old. And no, this isn't a parenting podcast, although I've learned more leadership lessons than I can count from being a mom. No, this story will teach you more about success with your teams than you might imagine. So it is 9 o'clock at the List House. We just finished breakfast and I was getting ready to assign the chores. We homeschool at the List House. So we had 30 minutes and I have a plan to my homeschool day. I have things that we need to get done. I am a working mom and a homeschool mom, so we have to get our homeschool done in the morning so that I can get work done in the afternoon. I'm sure you juggle a million things like that as well. So we had 30 minutes from that moment till when we needed to start school. So I give the chores out, right? Here's what we're going to do. And I look at my 5-year-old and say, you have one thing to do today. All you have to do is go into your room and clean up all the Legos that are on the floor. That's it. So I turn around, face the breakfast table full of the bagel crumbs and the yogurt spills and all the breakfast carnage that happens when you have little kids. So got that done. I'm walking past my 5-year-old's room and I look inside to see him not cleaning up, but just sitting on the floor playing with Legos. So I pop my head in and I'm like, come on, buddy. I need your help today, right? We have things to do. Let's get to it. Come on, get to it. And he slowly turns his head to me and stares me dead in the eye and says, "You are making me not clean because you are making me mad." And I don't know what it was specifically about that comment that morning, but it did not sit well with me, as you can imagine. So I said, "Can you just do what I've asked?" And he says, "I don't know how." And I respond, "You don't know how? Just pick one thing. Look at one thing on the floor. Name one thing that you see." And he says, "I don't see anything." And it was in that moment that my patience totally snapped. And so I dropped to my knees in this dramatic, award-winning mom of the year moment. Then I scoop up all these Legos in a fury and I pick them up and I pointedly just shove them into the bin. And I look at him and I say, "See, was that so hard?" And the room goes silent because my 2 other kids are in the room. They're looking at me terrified because Momzilla has showed up this morning, apparently. I stand up just fuming, leaving the room thinking, why can't he just do what I've asked? I don't have time for this. We have things we need to do. And of course, it wasn't long before I thought back and, was like, that was not my best moment. Did not handle that well. So I invited my 5-year-old into my room to have a conversation. And I started by saying, "Look, buddy, that wasn't kind. I wasn't patient. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. I'm sorry." And as we started to have this conversation, he scooted closer and closer to me. And I finally said, "Buddy, will you forgive me?" And he just broke down, crying. And this big, tough man wall just crumbled. And we talked. We had a conversation about what it means to be a part of a family and contributing to the house and doing what I've asked, because together our household is more successful when we all chip in and help each other. And we had a sweet moment. But what happened next was what totally surprised me. He went back to his room and he cleaned up the floor as I had asked. But then he moved on to do all these other chores in the house that morning that I didn't even ask. And he did it with a happy attitude. And it just reminded me that in order to fuel that motivation from him, we needed to have a moment of connection. Now, as leaders, we've all been there, right? Maybe not with Legos, but with our team members who just aren't performing or they seem disconnected. Maybe you felt frustrated wishing they just do what you asked without all the pushback. And I know I felt that way as a leader. I had many days feeling like we have too much to do. Why can't they just do what I've asked? But here's the thing I learned. The heart of organizational success, the secret to building high-performing teams, is connection. It's not about having the best systems, the most talented people, great perks. It's about whether or not your team feels connected to each other, to you as their leader, to the purpose you're all working toward. Let's talk about what happens when that connection is missing. Have you ever been in a job in a workplace where you have felt one of these things? Maybe you've thought to yourself, it feels like everyone's just looking out for themselves. Or, I don't feel comfortable sharing my ideas. No one really listens. Or maybe you felt, I'm just here for the paycheck, counting down the days till the weekend. Or maybe leadership talks about vision a lot, but I don't see how my job fits in. Maybe you've thought, I feel like an outsider here. Or my work goes unnoticed. No one sees what I contribute. Maybe you feel like your coworkers are fine, but you just don't really consider them to be friends. I've been there, and I'm sure you have too. And when you feel disconnected from your team, from your boss, from your organization, it is hard to stay motivated. So this disconnection I'm talking about, it's like a force that's pushing us further and further into isolation. When people feel undervalued, unseen, or excluded, what do? They push away. When my son and I were arguing, that tension and that lack of understanding between us made the gap larger. It pushed us further apart. My first job out of college was a public school music teacher. And I remember overhearing teachers on other teams mention my job with comments like, must be nice, as if my job was significantly easier. And that hurt because I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like my work was valued by my coworkers. It felt like it was every person for themselves. And that didn't do good things for a culture or for my connection to the community of that workplace. And that's the damaging effect of disconnection. Okay, you ready for some crazy numbers? Recent studies show that nearly 60% of employees in the US feel disconnected at work. 60%. That's a lot of people. And so that means if you have a team, there is a pretty good chance that some of them feel that way right now. Okay, you ready for some good news? I am. I'm an optimist, so I'm always ready for good news. Okay, so if disconnection is this push away, then connection is the pull. It's that magnetic force that draws us in. It makes us feel like we belong. It makes us feel like we matter. Think about a place where you feel like, I belong here. Maybe it's the community you have in your neighborhood or your friend group. For me, I feel it in my church community. I feel it in a business cohort I'm in. And there's a group of ladies that I've done dance classes with for years. Former music teacher, dancer. I'm giving away all my best kept secrets today, huh? Anyway, this connection isn't just a nice to have. It is essential. And let me tell you why. Did you know that loneliness is now considered a public health crisis? Former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's 2023 report found that nearly 50% of U.S. adults report feeling lonely. He also found that chronic loneliness raises the risk of premature death by 26%. Do you want to know something else that raises the risk of premature death by 26%? Smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So sure, connection is good for productivity, but I think we can say with confidence that it is good for us as human beings. This kind of connection building I'm talking about, it isn't about these huge, big, time-consuming efforts or like these grand gestures or elaborate team-building activities every month. It's not about that. It's about the small, consistent actions that simply show your people that they matter to you. Okay, so we're going to do 5 ways. I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can start building daily habits of connection. Not these grand gestures, these daily habits of connection. And friend, this is so easy. Okay, here we go. Number 1, be present when you're with someone. See, I told you, it's simple. Not half listening while you're scrolling through your phone or mentally checking off the things you have to do on your to-do list. And I'm sure you have been in conversations where the person you're talking to is clearly distracted. And when that happens, what's going through your head? What assumptions are you making about how they feel about you or how they feel about the time spent with you? Yeah, it feels like they would rather be somewhere else. So simply eliminating distractions and being present is one of the easiest things you can do to build connection with your team. Okay, the next is make time for connection. Make time for it. Even when your schedule's tight, schedule those important one-on-ones to check in with your team. Not just when there's a problem, not just when there's a project to discuss, but just because. Just to see how they're doing, what they're struggling with, if there's anything on their mind they need to talk about. If you want to know more about how you can do these kinds of one-on-ones, there is another podcast I did just on one-on-ones. You can grab the link to that podcast episode in the show notes. And the next way is a challenge for all of us, both when it comes to our work relationships and our professional relationships. This is simple, but this is a real challenge. Pick up the phone when someone calls, even if it's just to say, hey, I can't talk right now, but I'll call you back soon. That small acknowledgement that you're there, that you care, and that you're not just swiping away the call is huge in our day and age. We're in a digital time. We're lonelier than ever. And just to be clear, I am not saying pick up your phone after work hours to take calls from your employees. Not saying that. If you have set boundaries about your work hours, please, I hope you have, you got to maintain those. But if it's not outside of those boundaries, just answer quick. Make a real human connection and follow up later. It's so simple. And if it's your mom, just pick up and say, we can't talk right now. I know. Oh, that one's hard. Okay, next. Use people's names when you talk to them. There's power in being seen. It's just acknowledging someone as more than just another person in the room. It's just showing them they matter. And even just as simple as changing have a good day to have a good day, Josh. It communicates, I know you, I care, I see you. And finally, our fifth way is be intentional with the way you run your staff meetings. And don't worry, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of how I think you should run staff meetings here today, but I will say that every meeting needs to have a moment where you focus on building connection. What a wasted opportunity if you have all your people together and you just run through tasks and problems at hand. I mean, it's a serious culture killer. Do not waste this opportunity. I have a guide that shows you how to weave connection into the first 10 minutes of every staff meeting, and I want to make sure you have it. So go to heycarolus.com/kickoff or grab that free template in the show notes. Now, none of those 5 things are hard. Being present, scheduling one-on-ones, picking up the phone, using names, connecting during a team meeting, not hard. It does not take hours of your day. It just takes intention. And do you want to know what your greatest asset is? What's your greatest asset, friend? Do you think it's your time, your talent, your resources? Nope. It's your attention. When you give your attention to someone, you give them a piece of yourself. And that is how this kind of connection I'm talking about, real connection, it's how it grows. I want you to imagine your workplace. I want you to imagine a workplace where your people actually look forward to coming to work, where conversations on the day-to-day go beyond tasks and deadlines. And instead, they're talking about ideas, they're collaborating freely, and they're laughing, sharing personal stories, getting along. What if your employees stay not because they have to, because they want to? What if your efforts to fight loneliness and build connection, little by little, caused your people to feel seen and valued and heard and wanted? There's a quote I absolutely love from David Augsburger, and it says, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, it's almost indistinguishable. That, my friend, is the power of connection, and it's so good for us as humans. So if you want your team to succeed, stop focusing on tasks and strategies and outcomes alone. Build connections. This is the secret. Genuine human connections. When people feel connected, they're not just more productive, they're happier, more loyal, more invested in the success of your organization. So remember, being heard is so close to being loved that for most people, they can't tell the difference. It's powerful. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me today. That was fun. Don't forget to grab that Connected Meetings Kickoff Guide in the show notes and use it this week. I promise you it will make a difference. And until next time, I'm cheering you on.